Well, good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to the Saints Insider postgame show. I'm Zach Ewing, live from the Caesars Superdome here in New Orleans, where the Saints have defeated the Atlanta Falcons 20-17. The long local nightmare 7-game losing streak is over, and the Saints do it against the division-leading arch rival Atlanta Falcons 20-17. They kind of hang on and win this one. A big sack by Chase Young in the final series. Falcons ended up running out of time turned the ball over on downs, ran out of time in the last play there before they could get into field goal range, and the Saints win it 20-17. Darren Rizzi, as the interim coach, is now 1-0. We'll take your questions and comments live, show them on the screen as they come in. Just ask that you keep it clean, and want to let you know that the Saints Insider postgame show is brought to you by Tulane Doctors. Now at East Jefferson General Hospital, Tulane doctors are bringing academic medicine to more patients in new communities. Look for the shield to know the future of medicine is here. Call 504-988-5000 to schedule with any Tulane doctor or visit TulaneDoctors.com. All right, we're going to bring in Jim Derry. He's going to be our first guest today. He is the host of the Datitude podcast here with the Times-Picayune NOLA.com. Jim sat next to me in the press box all day long. We watched this one together. Surprise, surprise, Jim, Saints football, at least for one day, is fun again.
I want to know who did the parlay with the Marquez Valdez-Scantling 2 touchdowns, the Cam Jordan sack, and the Saints money line. How much do you think that paid today?
I tell you what, it paid more than a ticket cost to get into this place. That is for sure.
It's no question.
It was, it's kind of a muted atmosphere. I think people weren't sure how to react to Dennis Allen being fired. And most of the Saints fan base was happy about it. I think they were relieved. They didn't want Allen in here anymore. But they didn't know, okay, this is still the same team. They're overmatched against the Falcons, particularly with all the Saints injuries. And Darren Rizzi, kind of a no-name. Not a lot of casual fans probably even knew who the guy was or what he looked like. So what is this guy going to bring as the interim coach? The Saints played really, really hard in the first half. They're up 17-7 at halftime. Valdez-Scantling had the 2 touchdown passes. Defense was playing hard. This place was rocking and rolling, and it was fun again.
Well, I will say this. I mean, you kind of talk about subdued. I will say this. I think there were moments where this was the loudest we heard the Dome all season long, and I was worried. I tweeted out a picture before the game started of, what do you think, 55,000, maybe 60 tops, 60 tops here, and the plaza and the loge were maybe 3/5 filled. And so I was worried, and you could hear the Falcons fans, especially when Koo was going out there to kick a field goal. So I think at any point had the Falcons got themselves into it, I think it would have been loud the other way. But the Saints really never gave them a whole lot to cheer about. And so, look, the Saints played inspired football today for the first time in a long time. And that's the difference, right? I mean, there's no question the Falcons are a more talented team than this one. But the Falcons now have the retread coach. That's a Dennis Allen. We've been saying it for all year long, you and I, when we talked about the Falcons.
Like a younger Dennis Allen, yeah,
exactly. And so the Saints played inspired football, and honestly, the Falcons really didn't play very inspired football.
And the Falcons kind of got it going in the second half. 17-7 at halftime. They cut the lead to 17-10. Saints come down and get a field goal. Their only points of the second half that ended up being the difference is 20-10. Falcons come right down the field and score on a long Bijan Robinson touchdown run. I mean, look, this Saints team still has problems. They still can't stop the run very well. I mean, there's still a lot of issues offensively. But at that point, it was almost like they just kind of willed their way to win. You got a big Tyrann Mathieu interception, the big Chase Young sack on the last series. The Falcons had only the one timeout.
It was actually Cam Jordan.
And they had to use it. Yeah, and there was Cam Jordan before that. They had to use that timeout, and then they do get 18 yards on the next play on a pass to Kyle Pitts. But the clock was running. By the time they snapped the ball, there's inside of 10 seconds to go. And it's 4th and 4, and so at that point the Falcons had to get both a first down and get out of bounds, or this game was gonna be over. And they ended up doing neither. They didn't get out of bounds or the first down on a pass to Ray McCloud. So Saints win it. And I mean, Jim, if you think back to the beginning, not the very beginning of this losing streak, which was the game against Philadelphia, but the game at Atlanta, where it really felt like Saints outplayed the Falcons. Atlanta stole the game. Saints let them get away with it. This wasn't quite that lopsided with the Falcons outplaying them, but the Saints kind of stole this game back when Younghoe Koo missed field goals, all that stuff.
You're actually leading into what I want to say, and I think that I know you're not a huge believer in fate and you're not necessarily maybe more of a believer in karma a little bit, but I will say this: I'm a believer in both, and I think that today with everything that needed to fall right for the Saints to win this game, because there were so many chances for them to lose the game there in the second half, and Koo misses 2 field goals, one of them's a doink, and then they get the pick from Tyrann Mathieu, and the Falcons just make boneheaded plays, and actually Kirk Cousins looked kind of Kirk Cousins kind of looked like Saints fans think of Derek Carr. I mean, so what I've been saying for the last 2 years about Carr and Cousins or what, I still believe that. And Carr was the better quarterback today. Not that he would be the quarterback every day, but Cousins made some really boneheaded mistakes there. And especially on that last play, they get it to 4th and 4. Like you talk about, you got a chance to do something there, and instead you just throw a dump off pass that you can't even get the first down. So had he even got out of bounds, it took so much time, they wouldn't have had another play anyway. Yeah,
that's the one that you have to take a shot downfield and either try to get to the sideline or just throw a Hail Mary. I mean, that's your only options there. You can't throw that short pass. That does you no good. So Kirk Cousins did finish with 306 yards, but I was just looking this up. He has thrown 17 touchdown passes in 10 games. I'm looking at the game log. He has thrown a touchdown pass in every single game this year except for 2, and that would be the 2 games against the Saints. So Cousins is having a good season. Saints defense just matches up well with this guy.
Well, they do, but again, the personnel that the Saints had today was not nearly as good as the personnel they had in the first game. The Saints had no business winning this game. Let's be realistic about it. Again, the Falcons' talent is much better than the Falcons, and if they play this game over 9 more times, I don't know if the Saints even win one of them, to be honest. So they played – I know you don't agree with it. I'm just saying they played inspired football. We could see from the beginning, you and I both said that they had a different feel about them. When your best receiver is a guy that's been on the waiver wire for 4 or 5 weeks in Marquez Valdez-Scantling, and he scores twice, you're kind of living it right, okay? And so that was Carr's weapons. It was that and Kamara. I mean, so anyway, it was a crazy game. The Saints played inspired football, and at least, no matter what happens the rest of the year, at least you got 1 week of fun football if you're a Saints fan.
Yeah, we want to get to this comment here. We have, again, there's something going on with our system where Facebook users' names are not coming in.
We had this problem the other day.
Facebook user, but if you want your name to be shown, go over to the YouTube page, and we'll get your name up as well. But a Facebook user says, Rizzi needs to be the permanent head coach. It's great to see a coach with so much passion. That's where this conversation is going to go. It's
way
just one game.
There
is a history in the NFL of interim coaches kind of getting that bump and that buy-in from their players, and we definitely saw that today from the Saints. Now, a lot of times that doesn't last, and sometimes even when it does, you end up with a situation where Antonio Pierce gets named the head coach of the Las Vegas Raiders, which looks at this point like it was a mistake. It's way too early. If the Saints finish 7-1 or something, then we can have that conversation. Right now, I would just say enjoy today.
Well, we did a thing on Friday with Larry Holder about going back in history, not just with the Saints, but in the NFL since 2000, interim coaches that ended up getting the job. Now, the percentage rate of interim coaches to get the full-time gig since 2000, I believe it was 27%. But if you go through the names of the coaches that got of them, none of them, and I mean none of them, made any kind of lasting impact, and they were all fired within 3 years.
Yeah, so it's early, but a promising debut for Darren Rizzi. Not just the passion, not just kind of the bump and the buy-in from the guys. There was a couple of points, and they didn't always work out. Like there was the 4th and 2 on the Saints opening drive. Maybe Dennis Allen goes for that. I think Darren Rizzi, there was no question he was going to go for that. You had the timeout before the Younghoe Koo field goal attempt right before halftime where, I don't know if Darren Rizzi sees something, he wants to get different personnel in, and John Ridgway ends up tipping that kick and forcing a miss. Younghoe Koo missed 3 field goals today, which was the difference in the game. I mean, and so you can't give Rizzi the credit for all 3 of those misses, but he's a special teams coach. He is a game manager. He understands what he's doing, and I think he kind of pressed a lot of the right buttons today.
Well, regardless, had they not made the move and not fired Dennis Allen, what I think you would have seen today, and again, it's pure speculation, we'll never know, but this game wouldn't have been close. I mean, the way the Saints have played the past several weeks with Dennis Allen on the field and no inspiration, the team obviously quit on him. And I'm sorry to say it, but it's truth. I mean, I don't think there's any way the Saints win this game today if Dennis Allen is still the football coach of this team. So it's not necessarily because of Rizzi, but it's because there was a change and the Saints players felt like, we're able to go out there and it's not the same old junk all week long. And whether the changes he made during the week and the locker room changes and whatever made a big difference, I don't know. But they certainly were played inspired football, and there's no way they could have won without that.
Stefan says difference between Cousins and Carr. Carr has a better deep ball, makes less mistakes. Cousins is better when pressured.
Absolutely not true.
I think that's fairly close. Carr may not make fewer mistakes.
Who made long passes today? That would be Derek Carr.
He's saying Carr has a better.
Carr has
a better deep ball.
I thought you meant Cousins.
Cousins is better. When
that
pressured.
I agree with.
Yeah, that sounds about right.
Yeah. I misunderstood.
Yeah, listen, we're going to take a quick break here. We owe you a commercial break on the Saints Insider postgame show. We are going to get visits from Jeff Duncan, Rod Walker, Luke Johnson, Matthew Parrish, fresh out of the Saints press conferences, the Saints locker room. I got to look up an update. It looks like Darren Rizzi is on his soapbox up there, so I got to see what he said. He had a weird moment.
Yeah, I'm very interested to see what happened there. If you didn't see it, and I know most of you probably did, you're watching it on TV, but the little almost fainting moment with Peyton
Turner had to catch Darren Rizzi after the game. I don't know if Rizzi's just overwhelmed and felt lightheaded or something, but I'm sure our guys will ask him about that, and we will get updates as we roll along here on the Saints Insider postgame show. It's brought to you by Tulane Doctors, and here is a word from our sponsors.
At Tulane Doctors, we know your health can't wait.
So we made booking appointments easier than ever.
Just dial 988-5000 to book with any physician, any specialty.
Whether at East Jefferson General Hospital or one of our other locations.
Because your health is our top priority.
And because navigating healthcare should be simple,
personal,
accessible.
When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Pretty close.
Welcome back. We're talking.
I don't want to know what we're talking about.
I'm actually going to explain this because we were looking at some Darren Rizzi comments in the postgame during the break. First of all, Darren Rizzi was asked if he was nervous today. I assume that was the question. And he said he was so nervous, and I quote here, he clogged the toilet. Okay, so we were talking about the Creed movies, which are
we'll definitely talk about that on Data 2
We both
tomorrow,
like the Creed movies. As you may know, if you've seen them, Adonis Creed, he needs to use the facilities before a big fight. I guess Darren Rizzi.
That's kind of how I am before I come on the Saints Insider podcast.
Oh my gosh. Okay, well that we didn't need to know, but that's Darren Rizzi. And number two, we were talking about it looked like a fainting episode.
Yeah.
Darren Rizzi also explained that. We checked that out. And what happened was he said he was, and again quoting here, chewing his ass in reference to Peyton Turner, who was celebrating with 30 seconds left too early, I guess probably after the Chase Young sack, and spraying water like the Saints had won the game. And Rizzi got on him. And so Turner, after the game was officially over, tried to get Rizzi back and kind of shoved him in the back and learned something new every day. Darren Rizzi has a history of stingers in his spinal cord and between his vertebrae, and he got a stinger, said his right arm went numb and his whole body kind of sagged, and that's what you were
his
seeing.
right arm or left arm? I don't know.
But he said right arm.
Okay.
But
I don't know, because if it's your left
happened.
arm, you'd really get scared, because if your left arm goes numb,
your heart attack. Yeah,
exactly.
Sure.
So
yeah. I think he was leaning to the right, I think.
Okay.
If I'm remembering
All right.
correctly. So y'all can go
whatever,
back
he's fine.
and look at the video, but he says he's totally fine. And I look,
I'm just saying, if you're coaching your first NFL game and you've been in football your entire life and you're about to walk onto the field to coach your first NFL game in a place where there have been multiple, 8 Super Bowls played in, I can't blame them from getting a little bit nervous. I'm just saying. So,
no, absolutely not.
So I don't blame
and we
them
talk
at all.
about, we had the comment about Rizzi becoming the permanent head coach. I don't think it's very likely, but it's
certainly in his mind.
It's possible. And in his mind,
100%.
absolutely looking at this as an audition, whether it be
Whether
to
it be the
remain
Saints,
as
that's
a Saints
correct.
head coach,
That's right.
or do a thing like Dan
That's right.
Campbell did when he was the Dolphins head coach,
That's right.
interim head coach in 2015, I think it was, and later, becomes a head coach.
Or Coach O with USC, and he
Sure.
becomes the LSU.
I mean, interim head coaches can become full-time head coaches. It does happen, and Darren Rizzi would be stupid not to think of it that way. I mean, he's ambitious. He wants to be the head coach, and so he is nervous.
And by no means am I saying that there's no chance that he gets the job. I'm just saying let's don't crown him after one victory, because let me just tell you a little bit of Saints history that I don't know. You probably don't know this, but back in 1975, Ernie Hefferly took over on an interim basis. The Saints beat the Atlanta Falcons. Okay. It was only their second win of the season, and then they lost their last 7 of the year. So let's just not get too fired up. That's all I'm going to say.
Couple of things. Stussy has a comment here. The ghost of Matthew, Cam Jordan, and Demario Davis are going to drag this bloated zombie corpse out of a top 5 pick. Dude, enjoy the win. Just enjoy the win right now. If the Saints get the number 6 pick instead of the number 5 pick at the end of the year because of this, football is supposed to be fun. It's supposed to be fun, Stussy.
You know what?
It's okay.
If I got a choice between 3 and 14 and 5 and 12, I'm taking 5 and 12 every day in Christmas, because those 2 wins are a lot more fun than more losses. I'm just saying.
The other thing is, like, the New England Patriots won today, the Carolina Panthers won today, so your draft pick really didn't take that big of a hit, I don't think. I mean, just go win games. Just go win games. Ron Hendrickson. We didn't talk about this. First of all, Alvin Kamara. Congratulations to him. He went over. It was like 6,701 yards or whatever the Mark Ingram's franchise rushing record was. He only needed 12 yards to break it. He got 11 on his first carry today.
That's right.
Got it on his second carry. So
on an end around.
Congratulations to AK for the rushing record. Really had a good day all the way around until the Saints' last offensive play, which here's another example of I like the aggression. And obviously Darren Rizzi's not calling the plays, but he's going to give the okay to pass in that situation. Tells Clint Kubiak, go ahead and pass, get the first down and end this thing. And Kubiak called a great play. It was a
safe pass.
Kind of a mini wheel route to Alvin Kamara. Not going to throw that pass unless he's wide open. Yeah. He was wide open. Derek Carr put it on his hands, perfect pass, and Kamara dropped it. The most sure-handed running back maybe in the modern history of the NFL.
I mean, you throw that 100 times, he's going to catch it 99. So, I mean, it is.
Ron Hendrickson says, I feel bad for AK. That drop, fortunately, wasn't a killer. 99 times out of 100, he makes that for a walk-in TD. Well, I mean, honestly, the thing to do would have been to go down, because if he goes down there, the game's over. Walk-in TD.
Either way.
But
either way, but 99 times out of 100, he catches it. Absolutely great.
Right. So it didn't kill the Saints. He did. Alvin Kamara, I think, had his press conference and said, before anybody says anything, that was the most embarrassing thing I've ever done on a football field.
Not to go too far in the future, but, I find next week even more interesting than this week, because you and I kind of joked in the beginning of the season. I had told you, and I felt this way all along, just because I do believe in football karma, that whether it be because of injury or whether it be because Deshaun Watson stinks, that Jameis Winston was going to get a chance to come in here in the Superdome and play against his former team. And I find next week's storyline, even though that Dennis Allen's not here, it doesn't matter to me. I find it super interesting. And I said Jameis Winston, and the numbers probably went straight down like they usually do. But I'm just saying, Winston against Carr next week, it's going to be fun.
It's absolutely fascinating. The Saints are 3-7. Their playoff hopes are still like 1%.
Just like the Browns.
I mean, they're very low. Same with the Browns. But it's fascinating. The Browns are, by the way, are sitting at home watching this. They have a bye week this week. Saints coming off of this emotional win. Can they get back up and do it again? If they do, Jim, the Saints then get a bye week of their own. They would be 4-7.
Yeah.
Maybe that 1% goes up to like 5% and you can dream. But I think you need a win next week before you can dream.
Whatever percent it goes to, in the real world, it's still 0.0. I mean, you got to play the Packers on the road in December. You got to play the Rams, who are much better than you. You got to play, let's see, who else do you play that I'm leaving out?
Buccaneers at the end of the year.
Okay, Tampa Bay, fine. But, I mean, they're still –
Commanders.
Commanders. You're not going to beat the Commanders. You're not going to be able to stop the Commanders. So, look, just enjoy today. But that's what I'm saying. It goes back to you don't lose on purpose. You enjoy every game for what it is, and that's what I always talk about. And we talk about in the Attitude podcast. I know people disagree. But just enjoy every week for what it is. And there is no more – if you're going to talk about a losing season and a season that's going to be thrown in the trash at some point, at least you played Atlanta at home and you found a way to win. And you know what you did? You gave them a kick in the ribs because they needed to win this game. They are sick now, 6-4. They needed to be 7-3. When you're talking about where they're going toward when they're going to make the playoffs. I mean, they're going to win this division and make the playoffs. And now you gave them, maybe knocked them down from getting a home playoff game in the second round.
Maybe a 2 seed to a 3 seed.
Yeah,
sure.
Or a 3 seed to a 4 seed or whatever it is, and made their second round game that much tougher. So, if you're the Saints, at least you can take pride later in the year and say, we did that. And there's no better win, especially in a season like this, than beating Atlanta at home.
We are going to move on the Saints Insider podcast, kind of go through the scoring as we do. It was a scoreless first quarter. Saints actually had
like 140 to 28.
Yeah, I mean, they had the long drive that got stopped on fourth down on their first possession. Second possession, have a long drive. End up kicking a field goal, I think, on the second play of the second quarter it was. They had a third down and didn't get it on the first play. So they go up 3-0, got the ball back. Then it was the Marquez Valdez-Scantling show. Derek Carr hits him with a 40-yard touchdown pass with 10:48 left in the second quarter. That makes it 10-0. Strange play. I mean, Valdez-Scantling's got a history of catching deep balls, and Carr's got a good deep ball. And so from that perspective, it makes sense. I don't know what the Atlanta secondary was doing in that play. They had three guys there, and even Valdez-Scantling goes right past them.
The next one was even crazier. It was 67 yards from the Saints 30 to the Falcons 3. A 67-yard pass, and Valdez-Scantling ended up catching the touchdown pass after the Saints decided to run some silly plays that you weren't going to score on. But MVS, I mean, you're talking about a guy who's on the scrap heap. He's playing the role of Rashid Shaheed, and he played it pretty well today, I would say.
Yeah, no doubt about it. I mean, so he 3 catches, 109 yards. 2 of the 3 catches were touchdowns. The other one was the 67-yarder. So
it's good to see Kubiak is using. And look, I don't necessarily think that Kubiak had a great day today, because I actually think he didn't have a good day today. But what I will say about what I like that he's doing is he's finding the right times to something the Saints really haven't done a lot of before this year is throw that deep ball at certain times in the game and throw it multiple times in the game. And I really like that he's doing that. It doesn't necessarily have to work for you to keep doing it. It keeps the defense off base. And it happened to work today, but I like that he went back to it even after he got it the first time.
Yeah, so you had the 40-yard touchdown pass to Valdez-Scantling. That makes it 10-0. Falcons then put together a nice drive and scored. Actually, they had 4 chances from the 1-yard line and needed all 4 of them to score. Bijan Robinson finally gets in on 4th and goal from the 1. So that cuts the lead to 10-7. Then immediately on the first offensive play, deep for Valdez-Scantling, MVS catches it. He stepped out of bounds at the 3. 3 plays later, he catches his second touchdown pass. So now it's 17-7 Saints. We mentioned the field goal block by John Ridgway at the end of the first half. That was important. Keeps the Saints in front by 10 points at halftime. Then in the second half, only 13 points scored by both teams combined in the second half. And it was, the Falcons missing a field goal with a chance to tie it late. We had the Bijan Robinson touchdown run that cut the lead to 20-17, but that was it. We had a scoreless first quarter and a scoreless fourth quarter. The Robinson touchdown run, the last points of the game with 1:01 left in the third quarter.
Makes you wonder if the Saints had the pressure that they had in the second half, if they'd have had that all year long. And I'm not just talking about Cam Jordan and Chase Young. I'm just talking in general. Had they had that kind of pressure, and don't get me wrong, that Kirk Cousins was still able to throw for over 300 yards, and almost all of those yards came in the last 3 quarters. So he was averaging somewhere along the lines of 100 yards a quarter in the last 3 quarters. But still, the pass rush that the Saints showed, and in the bend but don't break defense, had this been here all year, it makes you wonder. And they played inspired ball with their starters here. Where would they be right now? And would Marshawn Lattimore be in Washington? I mean, it's
yeah. But I mean, ifs and buts, candy and nuts, all that.
No doubt about it. I'm just saying,
if they play better earlier, Dennis Allen's still here today. And
no, right, but that's what I'm saying. I mean, if the Saints had not waited this long to make this move, I guess was where I was leading to. And I'm not going to go back to they should have done it at the end of last year, because they should have done it at the end of last year. But I mean, it just goes to show that this team does have enough heart and will and enough talent, I guess, to make themselves competitive. They showed that in the first 2 games, and it's really frustrating that you had to go through the 3 heartless games that the Saints put together that ended with that Denver game. And I'm not even counting the Carolina game, but it's a shame that this team had to go through that just to think about where you could have been. I'm with you with the if-a-whiff-a-shifa stuff, but you make that move earlier. I don't know why you wait for a 7-game losing streak to make that move.
Yeah, Jim Mora had a line about that. I think that
coulda, woulda, shoulda.
Yeah, you couldn't, should have, could have, would have.
Yeah.
All right,
good teams don't make that.
That's right. And the Saints still not a good team. They're 3-7, but hey, it was fun in the Dome today, and it's like you said, sets up a fun game next week against the Browns. Whether the Saints end up getting back into any semblance of the playoff race or not, it's made these last 7 games. I mean, there was a point, I think it was after the Broncos game, the last home game here, the Thursday night game, and I turned to you in the press box and said, man, we got to sit through 5 more home games of this, and it's just hostile in here, and at least it was different today.
Like I said, the fans really, I was surprised that the fans were as loud as they were today, and not just because they won. I mean, just in general. We saw a couple of times the decibel level getting to over 120, which is super, which is as loud as Tiger Stadium got before the game started last night, before LSU stunk up the
false start on the first play of the game.
Exactly.
That was the high point of the whole night.
But it was just fun to see these fans. They really did get into it. Now, again, I think part of it is not just the coaching change. It's probably part of it is that you are playing Atlanta. I'm glad they played Atlanta today and not Cleveland this week and Atlanta next week, because they got the initial surge. But it was a fun atmosphere, and I'm glad the fans had fun.
All right, you're watching the Saints Insider postgame show, still awaiting Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, Jeff Duncan, and Rod Walker. They'll be coming out of the Saints locker room. I think Derek Carr is speaking right now. So we're going to take another break. We'll check and see if we can get any more postgame comment updates, and we will be back with you right after this.
At Tulane Doctors, we know your health can't wait.
So we made booking appointments easier than ever.
Just dial 988-5000 to book with any physician, any specialty.
Whether at East Jefferson General Hospital or one of our other locations.
Because your health is our top priority.
And because navigating healthcare should be simple,
Personal.
Accessible.
When you see the shield, you'll know the future of medicine is here.
There's no better place to parlay than Caesars Sportsbook. Parlay Builder gives you all the game day action from all across the league. Multiple games, legs, and props, all in one spot. It's so quick and easy, you can keep your focus on the games and your nachos. Or if you're focusing on one game, remember, you can place your same game parlays live during the action. Caesars Sportsbook, the only sportsbook app with Caesars rewards.
Welcome back to the Saints Insider postgame show. Looking through some press conference comments, locker room comments that are coming out here. Tyrann Mathieu said about the defense kind of stiffening after Alvin Kamara dropped that ball. He said if that was 3 or 4 weeks ago, we wouldn't have gotten that stop.
Absolutely.
Make it 1 week ago, Tyrann. You
agree?
Gotten that stop 1 week ago. No doubt about that. Derek Carr, we had nothing to lose. They already fired our coach. Okay. Colin Saunders wearing his Merry Christmas shirt says Darren Rizzi has not changed at all. DeMario Davis said the defense knew they had to win the game in the fourth quarter. They sure did that. It's a different feeling. Rizzi said Alvin Kamara was the player who bought in the most. He named him a captain this week. We saw Kamara break the record, and then he lets his team down in the end. But team picks him up. It's sort of these feel-good stories that you get with an interim coach.
Right.
Again, whether it's going to last or not, I don't know. I mean, this is still a very flawed, very injured team that does have a few tough games at the end of the schedule, and they're at a point where they have no margin for error. So forget that and just focus on today.
Well, the problem is they have way too many injuries as well. I mean, you're talking about your wide receiver 1, your wide receiver 2 are both out.
Your cornerback 1 and cornerback 2, if you count Lattimore as being out.
Yeah, I mean, so let's be realistic about where this team could be. But again, all you want to see out of a team is that they give their. I mean, that's not going to last forever, but at least for the rest of this year, I mean, all I want to see, I know there are people out there that are hoping they'll lose, which is silly. But for most normal people, you hope you see maximum effort. And I think there's zero question that today you saw maximum effort from this football team.
And to people talking about top 5 and top 3 draft picks, this team's too talented for that anyway. They were always going to win minimum 5 games, I think. And I still think that's the number.
It's not just that, Zach. I mean, you're talking about people talk about wanting a better draft pick. What does that do for you? Who knows? I mean, you don't know. Ask the Houston Texans what it got them when they won on the last, Lovie Smith gave kind of a certain one of his 5 digits he gave to the team that was about to fire him, and they won a football game they probably shouldn't have won and really ticked off his fan base. But guess what happened?
Yeah,
instead of getting Bryce Young, they got C.J. Stroud. Which one would you rather have? There's no question they would have taken Bryce Young had they had the first pick, and it worked out. So you just don't know. Just because you get the 8th pick instead of the 3rd pick. Anyway, I think this team is in a position to where whatever pick they get, they're probably going to be better off trading down and getting a few more. So this is not necessarily a quarterback-rich draft or, there'll be enough offensive linemen, which is what this team really needs. We'll talk about the draft in a few months.
Yeah, there's plenty of time for that. I did. This is a little bit petty, but you asked about it during the break.
Yeah.
I put up a poll on Twitter during the game when the Saints were playing real well. It was 17-7. And I said, there's 3 options here. Do you think Dennis Allen is watching this game and is happy for his team, watching this game and is bitter about the way things ended, or he's out fishing, he's not watching the game? If I were him, I would not have been watching, but I think there's a good chance he was. What would you choose?
I actually took a part in your poll, and I said that I thought he was watching and rooting for this team to go on because I think Dennis Allen has always been a nice guy. I think Dennis Allen is a nice guy. So I don't think he's the bitterness kind of guy.
Might have been too nice. That might have been.
It's definitely one of his problems. It's not a positive in football. Trust me. And so I think he was actually home, probably watching, wanting the Saints team to win. And I would be very surprised. I think it was either that or fishing. I don't think he was watching with bitterness and rooting for the Saints to lose. I don't think that at all.
Yeah. It just doesn't seem like it's in his nature.
It's really not.
I'm not saying he was jumping up and down and celebrating, but I think he was probably ultimately happy.
He didn't have his visor on and pacing the floor at home, burning up the carpet.
Yeah. For the record, watching and bitter won the poll. With 44%. Fishing was 34%, and watching and happy only 22%. So I don't know about that. Let's go through some final stats from this game. I believe the Falcons actually ended up with an advantage. They did 468 to 365 in total yards, although it's funny. The Falcons only had the ball for 3 minutes and 20 seconds in the first quarter, and then they dominated time of possession after that. They held the ball for
a lot of 3 and outs in the second
32 minutes of the last 45. I didn't even realize 32 of the last 45 minutes were possessed by the Falcons. Pretty amazing. So they did finish with a lot more plays, 73 to 52 yards per play. Though the Saints 7 yards per play. Now it helps when you get 107 on 2 passes.
Yeah.
But even looking at like rushing, 96 yards and 27 attempts, 3.6 per carry. So not great.
That's not very good.
Falcons had 181 yards rushing.
Which makes you wonder. I thought that, you want to talk about game plans, and I said earlier, I thought that Kubiak didn't have his greatest game. I thought that Atlanta, the mentality of them coming out of the gate was horrendously bad. I mean, you and I were kind of joking. It's like, give the ball to Bijan right, give the ball to Bijan left, give the ball to Algier right, give the ball to Algier left. And they weren't doing that. They were like trying to get cute, and it cost them early in the game. And I think had they taken a lead early on, the Saints would have had a really hard time trying to catch up.
Yeah, you almost wonder if the Saints' injuries in their secondary helped them in a way, because then the Falcons, Zach Robinson, and the offensive coaching staff look at it and say, well, we ought to attack the secondary where all the injuries are. And they came out throwing, and, Kirk Cousins, again, he had 306 yards passing. But I thought the Saints secondary held up pretty well. Alontae Taylor got called for a couple penalties, but
one was silly.
There was not a lot of wide open receivers or anything like that out there. I mean, Cousins was having to throw into tight windows. Darnell Mooney, it was Kyle Pitts made an unbelievable catch
along the left side,
along the left sideline, and it was the play right before Bijan Robinson goes 37 yards for a touchdown, or 38 yards for a touchdown. So that was, the Falcons had to make plays to move the ball, and they did make some. This is a good offense. But, ultimately, Saints had a lead and played well with the lead.
Yeah, and, you again, you go back to, you think about those 2 games they lost after the 2 games to start the season, and Carr put them in position to win the game, and they took the lead and couldn't hold on. So how much different would this season be, man? How much different? And I know we're going back to ifs and whats and whatever, but man, they did something today that they really haven't done a whole lot of, and that was hold off the opposing offense when they really had to.
Yeah,
they definitely did that today.
Let's talk about that just for a minute, because the Saints are 3-7. Even one more win somewhere along the line, and again, if they get that win like against Carolina next week, maybe they don't fire Dennis Allen, and maybe they don't get this one. So this is all, hypotheticals are what they are. The Saints needed one more. If you're 4-6, you can call yourself at least on the peripheral of the playoff race. At 3-7,
I think they won either against Philadelphia or Atlanta, and then going on a losing streak and lost to Carolina, I think they still would have done it. So yeah, if they would have won one of those games, maybe we would be here and they'd 4-6. But again, I mean, hypotheticals. Even 4-6, I don't think in the grand scheme of things isn't going to matter, because again, their schedule down the rest of the way, I think looks a lot tougher today than it looked when we were talking about it back in May and June and July.
Oh, there's no, especially the end of it, because you're talking about a Washington
team.
Commanders team that is resurgent and looks like a playoff team.
Right.
I would actually argue the Packers game maybe looks slightly easier, but it's still not a game you're going to win at Green Bay on December the 23rd.
I mean, if I had to guess, they're like an 8-point dog in that right now.
Yeah. There are some winnable games. The Rams game obviously was always going to be tough. Winning in Tampa Bay is going to be tough. I mean, there's losses built into this schedule, especially with all the injuries, with trading away Marshawn Lattimore, with the flaws we know this team has in run defense and offensive line and things like that. But really, I think sometimes sports just are what they are. You just enjoy the game for the game and enjoy your team winning for one day, and that's what we got today.
Well, that's kind of the point. And again, you go through, and I thought overall, I thought the offensive line played a pretty decent game. I wouldn't call it great, but I don't know. Did Fuaga ever come back?
He did.
He did come back. Okay, so
he
was out
left
for a
the
little
game
while.
and came back.
But I thought overall that the offensive line played a pretty decent game. Foster Moreau continues to be a bright spot for me for this team. Looks like Juwan Johnson is starting to be a bigger part in this game after he was
has
injured.
to be, right? Yeah.
After he was injured early in the season, started coming back. So
I do wonder, and I'll ask you this: Taysom Hill never left the game, but there were times when you would have thought he'd be in, and he wasn't.
Was he on a snap count, you think?
I don't know what the deal was, but there were times
it makes you wonder. I think he had to be on a pitch count. We were talking about, there was one play in particular where it was 3rd and 1, right? And they decided
right before MVS second touchdown catch, where he's standing on the sideline.
We were wondering what they were doing.
So we'll get an update on that. But
maybe you can ask the expert.
Luke Johnson is here from the Saints locker room, so we're going to make the switch here. Our thanks to Jim Derry. You can catch him every weekday except Tuesday.
Every weekday morning live on YouTube on our own. We have our own YouTube page, Datitude YouTube. It's at Datitude Pod, I think is what it is.
Just search. There's not that many channels that have Datitude.
You can find it every morning, every weekday morning live at 11 a.m. except Tuesday. And tomorrow it's just us talking to you, where you type in the comments and we respond to, or I respond to your comments. It'll be a lot of fun.
So you can catch Jim on that, and we'll bring in Luke Johnson, Times-Picayune Saints beat writer, fresh from the locker room. Luke, we had a fun one today.
Yeah, that's one way to put it, unless you're trying to write a game story on at the buzzer. That wasn't fun. It was a fun game, though. I will take that. I'll take that over what we had been seeing for the last couple of months.
You don't get any sympathy for noon games. You just got to figure it out.
Yeah, I don't. I'll take it.
Yeah. Anyway, it's better than the 26-8 in LA or the losing to Carolina where everybody's despondent in the locker room. I have to imagine the guys were pretty pumped up.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, I don't think anybody maybe was more pumped up than Cam Jordan was. He was wearing like a set of fake brass knuckles that said hate on them for Falcons Hate Week. He got his first sack of the season. The defensive line was kind of eaten in that game a little bit. Chase Young had the big strip sack in the end that really kind of derailed the Falcons' last drive. Peyton Turner had the big strip sack down in the red zone that made them settle for a field goal. Look, those guys were just absolutely ecstatic to end it. And at the same time, they realize what it is. They're a 3-7 football team. They've got a lot of work to do. They got a lot of work to do, even frankly, from this game. Foster Moreau was kind of irritated that they only scored 20 points. They had 4 straight 3-and-outs at the end of the game that kind of allowed the Falcons to get back into it. We should have been better, but they will gladly take a win.
It's so much better to have those conversations after a win.
It's so much better for them to have those conversations with music blaring in the locker room. I'm not sure I'm going to be able to hear any of my interviews in there, but hopefully we'll see.
And
including Unwritten, which they must have been just like playing the players' playlist in there.
Wow.
Yeah.
We need to get a hold of that podcast.
It might be their new anthem.
Give it out to people. That's funny.
Yeah.
Hey, the rest is still unwritten. The Saints have 7 games left, and it's
I'm
not
going to
over
incorporate that into my
yet.
game story.
You got to. All right. Saints took a 10-0 lead in this game. They're playing very hard on defense in the first quarter, and then they kind of hang on. How much of that is due to the Darren Rizzi bump and buy-in and all that, the energy sort of? It's hard to measure that.
Yeah, I mean, we'll see, right? I mean, I think there definitely was an element of that this week. Look, all of us, with the exception of Matt, picked a close game because we kind of felt like that was going to have an impact on the game. And we kind of felt it in practice, and you could sense that maybe they were going to be playing a little bit differently. Even still, I'm surprised. I'm surprised that Derek Carr threw for a season high in passing yards with like a Marquez Valdez-Scantling and a bunch of guys you've never heard of today. I'm surprised that they held Atlanta to 17 points playing with really Alante Taylor and a bunch of backup corners. That's still a pretty big feat. Now we'll see if they're able to carry it over into next week and the week after that and be competitive the rest of the season. But yeah, I think the sense I got from the guys is they all felt like they were way too, like they all felt like they weren't a 2-7 football team. They were a 2-7 football team trapped. A better football team trapped in a 2-7 football team's body, for lack of a better term.
Caught in this nightmare where every week was somehow worse than the week before it.
Yeah, Demario Davis brought up a point to his guys. This is something we learned in the locker room. Or I guess it was Joe Woods. At some point in 8 out of their 9 games, they've either had the lead or have been within 1 score in the fourth quarter this season. So there was a challenge to the defense this week in finishing games. They're like, look, we're better than that. We're a better defense. And that's exactly what they did today. It was a 3-point lead, but they went out and they finished it and they made the plays to go win the game. So, again, 1 week against a very good football team, like a really good football team that was pretty healthy this week. But it's encouraging, and it was a lot of fun, a lot more fun than the last 2 months have been.
But by the way, we'll just get confirmation from Luke. We saw the tweets and things. Darren Rizzi is fine. He kind of had a weird situation after the game, but I guess it ended up being a stinger.
Yeah, you're gonna have to ask Matt about that.
Just a stinger.
I just
a
out
stinger,
before Rizzi got in there, but that's he
All
looks
right.
okay.
We'll ask that with Matt. I'll say this in closing, Luke. It felt the Saints obviously gave one away in Atlanta, and that was at the very beginning of this losing streak. They kind of stole that one back today. They gave up 181 yards rushing and still won the game. I mean, they instead of giving up the play at the end that allows Younghoe-Koo to kick the field goal, they make a play that prevents him from being able to try this time. He also missed 3 field goals, all this sort of things. It does in some ways, and I'm not predicting a playoff run or anything, although to my credit, I did pick 20-19. I was trying to scheme ways like a punt snap goes over Hayball's head and he's got to bat a safety out of the end zone in the closing seconds or something. I was trying to find a way to get it done. But anyway, I'm not predicting a playoff run. It feels like at least an energy and effort and an attitude turnaround.
For sure. For 1 week. Let's see how sustainable this is. But like that for sure was palpable this week. You could feel it all throughout the week. They practice a little bit later. They're asking the players to come in a little bit later. They're leaving the same time. Yeah, it's for some people that routine change is like not great, and for others it is great. But you could definitely feel a difference in vibes, and I think we saw that play out this week. Even if the Saints benefited from good fortune, Younghoe-Koo misses 3 field goals for the first time in his career. Some kind of wacky things happen, but look, they're not going to apologize for it. They got to win.
All right, go clean up that game story, I guess.
Yeah, please. Thank you.
All right. Luke's going to go clean up his game story. You can read it on NOLA.com. Matthew Paris is our other Saints beat writer. Matt, I guess we'll start with what we said. You were listening to Darren Rizzi, who not only explained the stinger that he had, courtesy of Peyton Turner at the end of the game, but he was on one. I mean, he was on his soapbox.
He also clogged the toilet this morning, which I did not ever want to know, but I guess I know now. So.
Have you seen the Creed movies?
Oh yeah, huh? Yeah, yes,
Yes,
yeah.
before a big fight, somebody's got to take his gloves off.
Right.
You get nervous.
Right, yeah. I guess comes with the job. I guess I'll never know. But the stinger, yeah, Peyton Turner apparently bumped him a little bit too hard, and Darren Rizzi has, I guess, a history of like back problems or shoulder, and so he hit him just right, and his left arm went completely numb. So they played Lincoln Parks in the end during the week, but they should have played numb instead.
Oh wow!
Thank you.
Wow. And the rest is still unwritten. So
yeah, there you go.
All sorts of music puns to be used. But in all seriousness, the music choices, the practice changes. I mean, these are superficial things. At the end of the year, the chances are the Saints are a 6-11, 7-10 football team, whatever it is, and we look back on this as just one fun week. But there's also the possibility it's more than that.
Yeah, I mean, well, they'd have to win 5 of their last 8 to go 7-10.
Sure.
So, it is
4 of their last 7 now.
4 of their last 7 now. So I still would be surprised by 7-10, but I do think you do see the post coach firing energy bump that always happens in these types of situations. And I'll admit, I discounted it throughout the week. I was a little jaded by other circumstances. I thought the Falcons just completely gave that game away. Like if I was an Atlanta fan, I would just be like, Younghoe Koo missing the 3 field goals, just poor. I thought their decision making early in the game by getting away from the run,
just run the ball.
I thought the Saints played with better effort. I don't know if they played with better execution. I mean, they came up big in big moments, and maybe this is something that they can build upon, but there's still some problems with this team, and you saw the way that the Falcons went after cornerbacks like Shamar Jean-Charles, and as long as Kool-Aid McKinstry's hurt, they're still pretty banged up in certain spots, and I think you did see that today.
Jameis Winston's going to sling the ball all over next week, and he'll complete a lot of passes. We'll just see how many are to the right team, but it's going to be a fascinating game next week. You mentioned the Saints kind of stealing this game, and I think part of that too, Derek Carr played really, really well, given the receivers he had, given the fact that he may still not be 100%. I don't know, but he was 16-25 for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, no interceptions. That's 126.9 rating, and honestly, he goes over 300 yards if Alvin Kamara doesn't drop that pass at the end or close to it. AK may have gone down because the game's over if he goes down on purpose there, but Carr played really well too.
He did, and he was dealing with something throughout the week that he revealed that his dad was dealing with a medical issue, and he said that he wasn't sure whether he was going to have to fly home and visit him, and thankfully his father's okay now, but that was something weighing on him throughout the week, and he was able to, the first thing he did when he came in the press conference was dedicated that game to his dad. So that one was for you. So fortunately the Carr's family's okay, and Carr was able to perform and play well. But yeah, you just never know what people are dealing with in a situation like that.
Yeah, no doubt. Shout out to Roger Carr. Hope everything's okay. Basketball player who taught his boys how to throw a football when they were young. So look, talking about the receiving core, Marquez Valdes-Scantling. I mean, we knew he had this in him. He's done it before, but it's still kind of shocking to see, secondaries in 2024 being burned by MVS.
Right. Yeah. And they, before Dennis Allen was fired, one of the things he said about Marquez Valdes-Scantling was that they wanted him to do that Rashid Shaheed role. And they were able to effectively replicate that pretty well. I mean, getting behind 3 defenders the way he did, that was a perfect throw, a perfect catch. That's the thing that was so impressive about Derek Carr. Those deep balls today were they were on the money, and that had been kind of missing from this offenses in the past few weeks. They were still trying to run them. They just weren't as sharp accuracy-wise, and I think it really paid off today.
All right, on NOLA.com, Times-Picayune tomorrow. What are you writing about?
Going to be focusing on Alvin Kamara, the decision to make him a captain, and kind of his buy-in, how it represented Darren Rizzi. If Darren Rizzi got the players to buy in this week, I think Alvin Kamara is maybe the most perfect encapsulation of that.
Yeah, in a roller coaster day, the guy breaks the Saints' all-time rushing record, which he was only 12 yards away. He's named a team captain. Everything's going well. They're playing well. Then he drops the pass, and he's got to have that pit in his stomach that I just cost my team the game, and then they end up getting the win anyway.
Yeah, he came into the post-game press conference. We even spoke before Rizzi, and that was the first thing he said. He apologized for it and said it was like the the lamest thing he's ever done in his life on a football field. So,
Lamest.
or it was lamest or most embarrassing.
That's
One
a
of the two.
great adjective
Yeah.
there. All right, you can catch Matt's story on Alvin Kamara and much more on NOLA.com. Matt, thanks.
Great.
All right. And now bringing in Rod Walker, Times-Picayune, NOLA.com sports columnist. And Rod, we saw something different today, finally.
Yeah, we did. I mean, we kind of talked all week about the energy this team would probably have and the fight, and they showed all of that, and they needed it because at the end of the game, I mean, it came down to, can we make another play? Because that's been in this 7-game losing streak, especially toward the end of it. That's what was hurting this team. They were finding ways to lose, and they finally found a way to win.
Yeah, and they really did. I mean, between 3 missed field goals by a good kicker in Younghoe Koo. One of them, you got to give the Saints credit for the block, but the other 2 he just missed. The sack at the end, the Falcons make some curious decisions there with the clock at the end and all this stuff, getting away with the Alvin Kamara drop and still winning. I mean, these are all things. I think somebody said it, Tyrann Matthew said we wouldn't have gotten that stop 3 or 4 weeks ago. They did a lot of things today that they have not been doing. And then it sounds obvious, but I mean, even in little moments, effort things, momentum things, it all changed today.
Yeah, I mean, there was just a different kind of belief with this team, and that's kind of what they needed. I think in the past they kind of thought that, hey, we're going to probably find something bad's going to happen and we're not going to win this game. I think this time they felt like something good was going to happen. And Derek Carr even said that DeMario Davis told him that, I can't remember if he said halftime or before the game, but he just said, some good things are going to happen today for us. And it turns out he was right.
Yeah. Saints beat the Falcons 20-17. You're watching the Saints Insider post-game show. Zach Ewing chatting with Times-Picayune columnist Rod Walker. Rod, Saints get out to a lead and then really hang on today. 17-7 was the score at halftime. They only scored 3 points in the second half. They really didn't have any other opportunities to score in the second half. Is that a credit to this defense? Is that something we blame the Falcons for not executing? I mean, what do you make of that second half?
I thought the Falcons probably could have run the ball a little bit more. I think they kind of got away from it because I think they were able to kind of pound it a little bit, and I think they did get away from it. But other than that, I just feel like the Saints defense just made enough plays to win the game. I mean, Tyrann comes up with the big interception. They had some other interceptions, like DeMario dropped one in the end zone. I mean, they had some other plays they probably could have made in this game. So, but when it counted, games on the line, they came up with big plays. As Chase Young had the huge sack that if he didn't get that sack there, Falcons probably kick a field goal at least and, send this game into overtime, but he came up with a big sack there. So just they made plays at the right time.
And there were two strip sacks of Kirk Cousins, and the Falcons able to get both of those back. So this game could have gone even more lopsided. Sure. Darren Rizzi, we knew that there would be an energy bump. Was there anything else that stuck out to you or surprised you about his debut, whether it be decisions or ways they played or who they played or anything like that?
I don't know if I would say a surprise. I mean, he did go for it on that 4th down, but we all kind of thought he would, at that moment. And then later on in the game, he ended up kicking a field goal when they were 4th and short. But outside of that, I wasn't really surprised by anything he did. I mean, I think that's kind of what we expected to see from him. We thought he was going to, again, we keep talking about this energy that he brought. And I just think the players just all of a sudden, they just needed this breath of fresh air to kind of believe again. And that's what we saw today. So I don't know if he really did anything different from what we've seen all week long.
Ultimately, it remains to be seen how much this one means. Do you think it's just a kind of a positive blip in a long season and one day to feel good, or do you think that there's maybe some staying power?
I think the fact that the schedule lightens up a little bit on this back half, that there could be some staying power. I mean, they got 7 games left. Is that right?
7 left.
7 left. I mean, this team might could win 3 or 4 of those games. And, I mean, it's not going to be enough to get you in the playoffs. You're still 3 games behind the Falcons right now. But I think they can, win some more games because Rizzi wants to win games. He wants to be the coach of this team. You look at these draft picks. I mean, obviously winning games doesn't help that, but I think he's definitely a coach that wants to win. He wants his job.
Rod, what did you write about in your column today?
I'm just going to write about Rizzi and just some of the things that he did during the week and just kind of what the emotions were like leading up to this game and just, Merry Christmas.
We had a Merry Christmas. All right, so you can check out Rod's column. It'll be coming later today on NOLA.com. Thanks, Rod. And we're going to bring on our final guest. That's Jeff Duncan. Here he comes on the Saints Insider post-game show. Rod will make the handoff. Here it is. That mesh point. Oh, we got to get closer. We got to cuddle here.
No fumble like Derek Carr on the snap.
Oh, wow. Kirk Cousins fumbled twice, man. You can call out Kirk Cousins.
True, yeah. And look, I thought that was one of the big differences in the game was the takeaways. Saints had
They only had one takeaway, but
but they didn't have any of their own. They didn't give any giveaways, which was big in a game like this. And we know in the past, Derek Carr has made those critical mistakes. And I thought today, in addition to the big explosive plays that he made, he avoided the critical bad plays that have hurt him in the past. I don't think they sacked Carr once, and they didn't intercept him at all.
Yeah, and he was really good. We talked about that. He was 16 and 25, doesn't sound great, but for 269 yards, 2 touchdowns, no turnovers. And really the only thing close to a turnover was that fumbled snap you mentioned that he was able to jump back on. And the numbers could have been better if Alvin Kamara makes that catch. Maybe that's as good a place as any to start. Tyrann Mathieu said after the game, I thought this was really appropriate, that 3 or 4 weeks ago when Alvin makes that play, that would have lost him the game. The defense would have wilted. They would have found a way to give it away. They didn't today. Coincidence or some kind of meaning behind that?
No, I think there's something to that. I mean, Tyrann's standing right over there, as a matter of fact. And I think he has a great feel for this team. You know, he's kind of the conscience of the team, I think, in a lot of ways. And I think what he's saying basically is that the confidence was there, instilled in them from Darren Rizzi, that they probably didn't have with Dennis Allen. It was kind of a woe is me mentality, I think, under Dennis Allen. And sometimes that's fostered by a head coach when you're on 4th and 1 at midfield in the middle of a game and you elect to punt. That's a message to your team that you don't quite believe in them. Whereas today, Darren Rizzi does the opposite. You know, early on in the game, they go for it on 4th and 2. They aggressively were blitzing, coming after Kirk Cousins throughout the game. I think that message, that aggressive message, and establishes a mindset. And he also, during the week, as Tyrann Mathieu said, Darren Rizzi said to them, look, there's going to be some things go wrong in this game, and you got to stay the course. And I know that all sounds like simple, basic rhetoric, but it does point to an attention to detail and like the preparation that Darren Rizzi talked about. I think he prepared them for this game. And so when they did have that negative play there with Alvin Kamara, instead of hanging their heads, they responded to the challenge. That's something this team has not been able to do all season.
I think going into the year, we all had doubts about this team. Nobody thought it was a bottom 5 team in the NFL. Nobody thought they would go, 3-14 or whatever. There's too much talent on that roster. And so if you're Darren Rizzi, I think part of it is you come in and say, I'm not going to go crazy with the changes. If you just change the attitude a little bit, the talent maybe can shine through better.
Yeah, and even a game like today where they were missing, 3 of their top 4 cornerbacks, they're missing their top 3 receivers in the game. I mean, they were really hamstrung at some critical positions on the perimeter, but I thought they played very well. And when you have, I think, that mindset that they came into this game with, the confidence that they had, that speaks to the leadership on the team and obviously to the head coach. And look, I think Atlanta was a perfect type of team for this team to play. They're big rivals, so you're going to have their attention. They're not that good themselves. They're not the Kansas City Chiefs. It's not one of these elite teams. So I thought they were ripe today to maybe get knocked off. And they took everything the Saints could do, just to win by 3 points today.
Needed some luck, needed some things to bounce their way or bounce off of an upright their way, things like that. But they do get it done 20-17. Jeff, you wrote a column that was in this morning's newspaper about what the Saints should look for in their next coach. And it mentions Darren Rizzi, and there's certainly a possibility. I mean, interim coaches can become full-time coaches. How much did he improve his chances today? If you had to put a number on what you thought his chances were before today and there's still 7 games to go. But did he take a big step toward that full-time job today? Is it too early to say that?
I think it's too early. I mean, I think his audition is going to be an 8-game body of work. But clearly winning today against arch rivals, kind of getting some life back in the city, ending that 7-game losing streak was paramount, I think, to kind of keep this thing together. Now the challenge is, can they duplicate it? Can they stay up, and try to replicate all the energy and emotion that they played with today? That's going to be a challenge for this team. As we saw today, I mean, they eked out a 3-point win. They needed some things to go their way. And they were all in today, and they still barely hung on and won.
Yeah.
But I think he's definitely going to be considered for this opening, and I think every win he gets is going to help him. But this is an interesting coaching search in that the organization's kind of at a crossroads in a lot of ways. They had one failed experiment with Dennis Allen. I think everyone thought he was the natural successor to Sean Payton. Now they can't afford, I think, to take another step back or miss again on this head coaching hire. But what level of candidate can they attract here? Even though there's only 32 of these openings, there are always going to be demand for them. It's not an attractive
roster's in bad shape.
In bad shape. You got cap issues. You don't really have a long-term solution at quarterback. If you are a top NFL head coaching candidate, a Mike Vrabel, Bill Belichick, someone Ben Johnson, are you going to come here when it doesn't have a lot of things set up for you to be successful right away? So I think that's the challenge Mickey Loomis, Gail Benson have is what do they do? Do they maybe hang on to Darren Rizzi and make him the permanent head coach because they're not going to get someone really even better than him? And then the other thing to consider in all this is Clint Kubiak, who they just hired as the offensive coordinator, has a 3-year contract. All the offensive staff that he brought in has a 2-year contract. So that's also
it's money you're paying.
Yeah, it's complication in that if you bring in another offensive-minded head coach from that side of the ball, they're going to want to put in their system. Kubiak and his staff are probably out. So it's just a lot of complicating things that I think have to be sorted through for this organization to kind of make this critical hire.
That's the storyline for the rest of the season. We'll talk about it a lot on the Saints Insider and at NOLA.com/Saints. Subscribe to the YouTube channel, hit the like button. Anybody's got any last-minute comments, we can get them on. But I think we're going to wrap things up. Jeff, we'll talk about it this week. But the storyline now, you got Jameis Winston, you got a motivated quarterback coming in here to play his old team that didn't really give him a chance, to start the last couple of years, and he wants to prove himself. And then you got the Saints who, like you said, coming off this high, can they stay up for their new head coach?
Yeah, and can they play with that same nothing-to-lose mentality that they played with today? I mean, they really don't have anything to lose. They're kind of out of it. I know everybody's calculating right now how many games back there on the NFC
they're still
South.
Calculating draft pick, man. They're not.
Right.
They're not there yet.
It's way too early to start acting like they might be back in it. But I thought that was the right mindset to take into this game. You've lost 7 in a row. You're playing your arch rivals in the division. Just let it go. I mean, if you make mistakes, who cares? You've lost 7 in a row. Can they play with that same mindset again next week? Can they play as they made some mistakes today, had some critical penalties and things like that, but for the most part, they avoided the big gaffes that have really damaged this team in the past. Can they do that again? They're playing 2 teams here. They have a bye week after this week, but 2 teams in the Giants and the Browns that are perfectly beatable, that are also in very much kind of similar situations as the Saints, kind of lost seasons to some degree, potential coaching changes in both places being rumored. So there's an opportunity here for the Saints, if they can play like they did today, I think, to kind of start putting some wins together.
Yeah, even after today, 3 of the next 4 games are at home. There's a bye week in there, and the only road game is at the Giants, who lost to the Panthers themselves today in Germany. So there's a chance that they could get this thing rolling a little bit, and we'll see what that means. We'll talk about it on Wednesday's episode of the Saints Insider, and of course all week at NOLA.com/Saints. Our thanks to you for tuning in. Thanks to Jim Derry, Luke Johnson, Matthew Paris, Rod Walker, and Jeff Duncan for stopping by. Norman Bell, our cameraman. Spencer Urquhart's been producing and moderating the comments. And I'm Zach Ewing. Our thanks to Tulane Doctors, who brought you this postgame show, and we will see you next time.